It is indisputable that Donald Trump is in cognitive decline. The man's brain is mush. And considering how much the mainstream media talked about Joe Biden's age during the end of his presidency, it is embarrassing that they refuse to cover this story. But of course, we will, because it's so easy to cover. Donald Trump gives us example after example that he is in cognitive decline every single day, and he gave us two during his trip, in the beginning of his trip to Saudi Arabia, when he not only fell asleep, but also had to be guided, essentially having his hand held by his handlers because he was so confused walking around a room. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, this won't be the only shocking moment that comes out of Donald Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia. Of course, this all started with the announcement of Donald Trump's most corrupt deal yet. So before we get into his cognitive decline, I want to start with Rachel Maddow talking about his corruption.
We are now really hitting our stride on the kleptocracy part of what's going on here. While important parts of the federal government that serve the public just collapse under Trump, while Trump's FAA, for example, finds that it is no longer capable of keeping air traffic control systems reliably up and running at, say, Newark Airport, at one of the airports serving the nation's largest metropolitan area, as Trump's Pentagon has just dropped not one but two F-18 fighter jets into the sea, just slipped right off the aircraft carrier, and oops, that's gone. Nevertheless, in true kleptocratic fashion, the dear leader has his plane. He has just arranged for himself, as Senator Schatz was just talking about there, he has just arranged for himself a gift of a $400 million plane for himself that he wants to use while he's president, and then he plans to keep using it himself after he leaves the presidency as well. As if he's ever planning on leaving the presidency. For us, the public, we've got, airline CEOs emailing customers today saying, oh, God, geez, this air traffic control thing, woo, please keep flying. We swear we're being as safe as we can. That's what the public is contending with. But, what does Trump care? He's getting his own $400 million personal plane as a gift from a foreign country that he's going to go do some deals with as president of the United States, heading out today on this big Middle Eastern trip. I mean, for us, the public, we're all dealing with the cancellations and the delays and the reduced number of routes and the panic from the remaining air traffic controllers who have been put in this situation by whatever is going on at Trump's FAA. We, the public, are wondering what it meant when these guys insisted on putting in Starlink at the FAA. They started inexplicably using equipment from the company run by the president's top campaign donor to supposedly upgrade our air traffic safety systems a few weeks ago without a normal contracting process, right after that same donor demanded the resignation of the head of the FAA. We're all left wondering, as the FAA is apparently no longer able to reliably keep air traffic control systems running at major airports, should we be worried that they did that right before this all started falling apart? I mean, that's how it's going for us, the flying public. But for him, awesome flying palace he gets to keep. So long, suckers. In the shadow of the plane debacle tonight, that sort of textbook example of how a kleptocracy works, where the guy at the top converts the assets and functions of the nation and its government for his own purposes, and everybody else gets nothing. Like, that's how kleptocracy works. In the shadow of that plane debacle still unfolding tonight, we've got another story for you this evening about Trump doing something for himself while apparently making sure that nobody else in the country can get that same thing. We've also got news tonight on Trump's apparently illegal efforts to fire people and shut down parts of the federal government that he doesn't actually control.
Again, let's just talk about the mainstream media coverage of two very different presidencies. How much did we hear about Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden? And now Donald Trump's kids are setting up their crypto scheme. They're announcing new golf courses around the world in countries that are giving Donald Trump $400 million bribes that he's striking deals with, and no one wants to say a word. This is insanity. And this is just being treated like, well, it's a gift, and we're going to figure out the law. Man, maybe it's legal, maybe it's not. Maybe it's legal, maybe it's not. It's a clear violation of the Constitution. Even Republicans are saying so. This is insanity that the mainstream media refuses to do their job in covering this Trump presidency. It is embarrassing. Like I said, especially considering his cognitive decline that they won't cover. And it started with a little nap from Donald Trump right here.
Read a lot of the material now out of Saudi Arabia, and Mohammed bin Salman is saying we need a resolution on a Palestinian state. And I don't necessarily recall several years ago, pre-October 7th, as that being a demand that he had necessarily stated publicly. Do you think his position has changed, or do you think the way he has expressed himself has that?
Did you see at the end of the clip how he kind of just jerks his head up? He just gets surprised. Like, he's falling asleep in the middle of this meeting. If Joe Biden had done this, it would be the only clip you would ever see for weeks, months, years on end. It would be the defining moment for the mainstream media for his presidency. That is all we would see. And the same goes for this clip right here.
Signing on behalf of the United States, the Honorable Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America.
He doesn't even know where he is in the room. He's signing a deal, and he has a desk to his right next to him. And instead of getting up and going there, he walks across the room, just kind of all confused and out of it, doesn't really know what's going on. And they had to direct him like he's a child. Like he needs, like one of those vests that you like have a leash on. Is that what we need to do to the President of the United States? Really? Like, we need someone holding his hand, tugging him along so he can get to the right place and put his feet down on the, on the blue line they taped on the ground. And we saw this yesterday too. Donald Trump is consistently giving speeches announcing executive actions. He did this on Liberation Day. Again, we saw it yesterday, where he gives the speech and then just walks out of the room. And someone has to drag him back to say, no, this speech that you just gave, 30 minutes of you talking about an executive order you're going to sign, you do then have to sign the executive order that's right there. He is out of it. He's out of it. And we can't even just imagine how damaging this is, because we now have an economy based around the whims of Donald Trump. The price controls that Stephen Miller previously called communism, yeah, now Donald Trump has instituted those. The tariffs that at any point he can decide are going up, going down, going away, coming back, yeah, that's all at the whims of a man in cognitive decline. And that's why it's not just Democrats calling them out, but Republicans like Senator Rand Paul on MSNBC as well.
I think tariffs are bad. They're bad for trade. They're bad for prosperity. So anytime we can make them lower, that's better. And I've said all along, while I'm not for the tariffs, if the negotiations somehow made tariff barriers lower, I'll compliment the president. But you have to realize with China, he's getting to 30%, but he was at 145%. It's a smaller number, but it still will be a 30% tariff on everything from China. And so people who buy things from China, Americans who buy things from China, will be less rich. They will lose wealth, and that wealth will be taken from them in the goal of making trade fair, which some people want. But there is a cost to this, and it will be a cost to the consumer.
Why do you think the White House, the administration, has been so reticent to admit that to the American people? You and I both know it. Every small business, big business leader is aware of that.
It used to be universally known. I mean, this went on. We debated this in our universities after World War II. And by the time, the 1970s and 80s came, it was pretty much decided whether you were right or left, Republican or Democrat, trade was acknowledged as a good thing, and the world did get richer. Post-World War II, we all got richer, and we still continue to get richer over time. But now it's begun to be debated, and that knowledge is lost. But it's a pretty fundamental knowledge, and that's why when I debate with my colleagues, I present to them the facts. They say, well, the middle class has been hollowed out. But if you look at household income over a 70-year period, it's just not true. The middle class has thinned slightly, but it's because they moved into the upper class. Humanprogress.org does the statistics on this, and it's amazing what wealth has been created since 1820. But really, even since when I got married in 1990, it used to be a third of the world was living in absolute and utter poverty, $2 or less a day, and now it's less than 10%. So that's an extraordinary feat. 100,000 people rise up out of poverty every day around the world, and we should be glorifying that. Instead, we attack each other about what a bad place the world is, and it's actually just not true.
Well, the president argued that tariffs were going to pay for the tax cuts and they were going to reshore tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs. You and I could agree that was never going to happen. But does that argument that he makes, does all that just go out the window now?
Well, see, we still haven't really felt the pain of the tariffs. So if you survey people and you ask them, is it unfair that China does this or India does this? 75% of the people say, yeah, it's unfair and we should do something to make trade fair. But then if you tell them, if your television set costs $600, are you willing to pay $900 to teach those people a lesson and to make things fair? Most people aren't willing to pay a tax. They're not willing to pay extra for their goods. And also, if you pay $900 for a TV that was costing you $300, that's $300 you had to get your hair done, to have someone mow your grass, to have people help you, and you don't. So you're less wealthy in the pursuit of fairness. But people on the right used to not accept these fairness arguments. They used to say the marketplace decided these. As long as things were voluntary, the marketplace sorted things out. But now you have people on the right, I think, really adopting arguments of the left on fairness. And to get to fairness, though, there always is some sort of penalty that someone must pay. And in regard to tariffs, it's a penalty they will pay with higher prices.
Or another way, we could say less wealthy, more poor. I want to talk about the budget, though, because it could cut $750 billion largely from Medicaid. Your colleague, Senator Josh Hawley, has called those cuts morally wrong and politically suicidal. What do you think?
You know, I disagree completely. I think what is morally wrong is to have a huge percentage of your public dependent on government insurance and not going to more productive jobs that have insurance, much better insurance and much better health care. What's also morally wrong is to run a deficit of $2 trillion. So it's sort of a bait and switch. We offer poor people in our country free stuff, free health care, free food, and then they think, well, this will be a leg up. I'll get better. I'll be able to join the middle class someday. But then what we do is we borrow $2 trillion for the programs we provide for the poor, and in the end, we create inflation. So we give them a little bit more, we give them a little bit more, and then inflation takes. And what happens is it ends up being somewhat stagnant.
I feel like these are signs that hell is frozen over. Rand Paul is on MSNBC calling out Donald Trump for his economic policy. What time are we living in? That should be evidence enough that something is very wrong, which it is. And we're going to continue to call it out on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.